This is the European edition of Breaking Banks, the world's #1 FinTech podcast and radio show. We bring you the European unicorns, startups, founders, regulators, and leaders innovating the rapidly evolving FinTech scene today. A truly localized podcast with both English and local language content, with some of the world's most well-known hosts and influencers in the FinTech sector globally. Join us every week as we explore what makes the European Union a phenomenal proving ground for many of the fastest growing FinTech plays in the world today. Okay, let's roll. Welcome to the special anniversary edition of Breaking Banks Europe. I am the host of the Breaking Banks podcast globally, but this is here to celebrate the anniversary edition, the 50th episode, I think, of the show. We have with us Matthias Kroner from Germany.
Hi, Brett. Happy to be here.
Great to have you on. Also held up in Berlin, Megan Johnson. Megan,
hello,
welcome
everyone.
back to lockdown.
Thank you. Hi.
We have Paolo Cironi. Are you in Italy today, Paolo?
Buongiorno, buonasera a tutti.
Buongiorno.
No, I'm locked down in Frankfurt.
You're in Frankfurt today. And Matteo Rizzi. Matteo.
Hey guys, thank you, Brad, for giving the voice, the marketing voice to the Breaking Banks Europe show.
And representing the crypto contingent, Ajit Tati.
Absolutely. Buy Bitcoin, guys. It's
Buy Bitcoin.
Right,
it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. You can't
and thank you, Bitcoin, for being the sponsor
of this episode. Yes.
Always.
Yeah.
Half a Bitcoin was used to produce this episode. Okay, so a year in the BBU universe. Maybe Paolo and Matteo, can we talk about and Matthias as well, because you were involved in this conversation as well. Can we talk about the foundational elements? How did Breaking Banks Europe get started? Paolo, do you want to start?
Yeah, you start, Paolo, giving the serious one.
The story about Sydney and Cybers, yeah?
It was October 25th, 2 years ago. Me and Brett King were having a FinTech conversation during Cybers in Sydney, and we got the idea of expanding Breaking Banks from a European point of view, thus launched Breaking Banks Europe. And it's like 2 years now that we celebrated the first birthday of Breaking Banks, which is also the 50th episode, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm 50 years old. There's so many numbers which are lining up here. Gonna be a lucky situation, I guess. And it has been an intense journey together to build up the team, to start up the first episode, to understand how to organize that all. So far, learning and entertainment at best.
Okay, that's the serious sort of,
I was expecting some slides from the IBM guy. Just kidding.
True.
Noblesse oblige. Noblesse oblige.
Well, my story, my love story with Breaking Banks basically started during a breakfast in Milan, which a little bit, a few months later, that sort of meeting with Paolo. Brett was, at his best, full of Italian ties and suits in this super expensive hotel in Milan where the croissant cost $10. And Brett, start talking about, why don't we do this? Great brand. We are the most listened to podcasting. And I must admit, I didn't listen to a single episode of Breaking Banks up until that moment. And not that I do now, because I only talk about in the in the podcast. I don't listen to them because no one is pleased to hear his own voice, right? But I must say, I agree with
you need to develop your radio voice. That's the thing.
Exactly. It has been a great journey, and and also I believe that the podcast in general allows you to get into some sort of intellectual intimacy with people when you do it for the content and you don't do it for the marketing, which is, I believe, what we try to do. And then all of a sudden, since a few months, I don't know if you guys realize that, but everyone and his cousin started doing podcasts, isn't it? Thank you, COVID.
I guess this is the season for it, in terms of promoting or providing content to your audience if you can't get with them in person. Matthias, when you were coming off the back of your French deal and about to finish up, we talked about a podcast potentially as well, getting you to host, because what did you see as the value of getting involved in the EU podcast yourself?
No, yeah. First of all, it was a great pleasure when you approached me for that topic, and yes, getting out of the environment of the last transaction was a precondition to do so. Yes, otherwise, you are living in a kind of boxed world in which you cannot speak up openly and share your opinion about it. About recent whatever kind of developments. However, and this is exactly why I'm so happy to be part of that, because it's even given the fact that I couldn't spend the time I wanted to, but given the fact that we have had a lot of great conversations about all kinds from SME, crypto, banking, and so on, which I found to be leadership, not to forget. I think that was one of the very first ones. Which I found to be extremely great, and the podcast format actually delivered the opportunity to invite people you normally might not meet again or never met before, and speak very, nicely on the one side, sometimes a bit provokingly about the developments, and that's what I'm very happy for, to be part of it. And on top, maybe not like my Southern European friends, but I'm slightly extroverted, so to say. So I love talking about it, and it was a great opportunity being a part of that.
So Matthias, you're saying that you did an exit to be on Breaking Banks Europe, right?
That's exactly. This is how you have. This is how.
That's the value. That's the value of Breaking Banks.
And the initial title of the show, Matthias, was like how to sell FinTechs to the French guys. That was the initial title, right? Then we opted for a more generic one.
I have to give a legal disclaimer. All this is not approved by me.
It was not breaking French banks. Put it this way.
I have to mute. I have to mute now. I have to absolutely mute now.
No, I think nobody needs to break French banks.
No,
I think this is an interesting point. If you look at the Breaking Banks podcast itself, you've got a number of guys that came on the main podcast, like Jim Maroos, Ron Shevlin, and so forth, who are now doing they've got big traction as fintech influencers. Jim obviously has Banking Transform podcast, and so I like to think that Breaking Banks takes credit for that, sort of nurturing that talent, and sort of getting creating individual brands as well as the overall brand of the podcast.
It's like the PayPal mafia of fintech podcast.
It is, yeah, it is. I think that's extension. Even some podcasts that we see as competitive now, they started off by being guests on our show. So we won't get into that though. So,
Brett, I think it's now time to let Megan talk.
I was just going to ask her.
No, but because but the reason I know you were, but what was the first thing that I told you when I received the proposed guest list? Like 20 minutes later, I sent you an email. Where are the women in the host, guys? That was, and this is where I think Megan is the perfect segue. Remind the audience of our combo. Go.
Yeah, so I was in Lagos on the beach and
Lagos in Nigeria?
No, Neil thought I was in Nigeria, but
I felt that.
In Portugal.
Oh, you're in Portugal.
I think he only realized it maybe like a week after, when I actually then got invited to Lagos, Nigeria for a speaking engagement. But on the beach, and Matteo called me and asked, and I remember way before I joined 11FS, I was invited on to Breaking Banks, I think, back in 2016, but I was in between MAPA and 11FS, so it was a bit difficult. So it kind of came full circle for me, and it was, the one of the coolest requests that I've received. And
I proposed, Megan.
Yes.
You proposed to Megan on a beach in Lagos.
Yeah, exactly.
Portugal, not Nigeria. And
remotely, of course, as we would expect it during these times.
And I think for me,
he had his shirt off too, right? At the time. No, sorry, Megan.
And is of course wearing all black.
Yes.
Yeah, I think for me the past year, it's been just the variety of guests and topics that we've had has just been so insightful. And I think for me, like the episode where we talked about FinTech in Egypt was just absolutely crazy to hear of how vibrant and thriving this ecosystem is, and also some of the other kind of episodes that focused on some of the other African countries. So it's been, I think, while it hasn't necessarily had exclusively a European focus, it's been super insightful for me as a host. So
the Outside In series is specifically Breaking Banks EU. It's something we haven't done, Breaking Banks more broadly, so it's been great. And welcome to Nina Mahanti.
Hello, everyone.
Which was the call that I did just after calling Megan. We are here like telling the story how we got involved into Breaking Banks. So you can tell the story unashamedly, revealing all details.
How I got into Breaking Banks?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, back like 50 years ago when we were allowed to see people in real life. Oh gosh, I crashed
in the pre-COVID world, yes.
Yes. I crashed a Cybos party.
As you do.
Canary Wharf, right?
Yes, we were at Giant Robot. Yeah. It was a
free beer and alcohol.
Yes, there was. And we were all kind of sitting around and people watching, as we all love to do when we go to industry events. Always fun. And then Matteo came running up to me and said, I have to talk to you about something. And then we grabbed MJ and we huddled on the balcony and were just whispering and very excited and said, oh, maybe we can do this. And maybe.
By the way, that was the very first conversation we had before, right? We knew of each other, but never talked before. Remember, Nina?
This is true. And I didn't know that you knew who I was. This has happened now more
Exactly.
Nina, who doesn't know who you are?
It's probably because I'm just a shit poster on Twitter.
Hey. All right, let's not get personal.
Hey, so, Ajit, what about you? When did you come into the family?
Yeah, so Brett, you and I met at Cybos back in Sydney when, I was at Consensus.
With Consensus?
And Joe was
I think we'd met before that though, right? Maybe.
Yeah, we met...
maybe at a Finovate or something.
Sure.
Yeah. But it was. So you were working at Consensus. Joe Lubin, one of the Ethereum founders, along with Vitalik and those other guys. Joe had formed Consensus. We had him on the radio show. You were sort of acting as his press agent or coordinator or something.
So I used to run the FinTech, practice over there, and then. So I knew all the right people in FinTech, including yourself. And that's how we sort of got connected. And then we met again at Cybos here in London. And I think that's where we started talking about the podcast. And, you have to have, every bank now has a crypto program. And banks are really for crypto. So it was natural that Breaking Banks found a crypto guy as well. So that's kind of how we I think got together, and it's really great to, given that I have opinions on everything and I like to challenge people and kind of argue with them a little bit sometimes. So Breaking Banks is a great platform for just sometimes trolling people in real life, and that's truly enjoyable.
Trolling people in real life. That is the quote that defines Ajit, right?
In a podcast.
Yeah. All right, so maybe we talk about guests. Who's been your favorite guest on the show?
Or the favorite show altogether.
Or the favorite show, yeah.
Nina, you and I are going to answer the same thing, so you better answer before me.
Well, I've had so many wonderful experiences. I love all of our guests, Brett. How could you ask such a question?
No,
I love all my children equally. MJ, you were about to say something, though.
I think for me, I really enjoyed the Mambu takeover. I think specifically when I found out that Eugene used to be involved in NASA, like my mind was just completely blown. And I think, hearing the Mambu story, and I think Mambu has come from such a, the founders and Eugene kind of came up with the idea in such a unique way, I think, to, a lot of the ways fintechs and companies are started nowadays. It kind of was born out of his master's thesis, which I just thought was super interesting. And, it's always really nice to see like the ins and outs of how that bank fintech partnership works. So thumbs up for the Mambu episode.
And the only sponsor too.
Yeah, the only thing I kept telling myself when we were doing the Mambu episode is that I missed investing in Mambu in 2013 because the bank that was putting the money in my fund didn't want to, but it was convinced that Eugene was actually going to rock it, and then Commerce put the money, and we all see where they were. So it was a bittersweet interviews because I said, wow, I could have been a shareholder of it. That's the story.
Hätte Fahrradkette, as the German speakers will know what that means.
Say it again, Megan. Say it again.
Hätte Fahrradkette.
Kind of schnitzel.
In my American German accent.
What is he trying to say?
What is it? How would you translate it?
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Shit happens. What?
Yeah.
Shit happens. Yeah.
Ajit, what about the big crypto session we had with CZ and Henry from Crypto Capsule?
Henry the Machine.
Henry
is stacked like a Bitcoin network.
Henry the Machine, yeah,
Henry.
the Ken of finance.
This is funny, because I know he'll listen to the episode most likely, but
of course,
Henry Aslanian, a great friend of the show, and we did this combined show with Crypto Capsule. And he came on, and we had CZ from Binance, come on, CEO, talking about the foundation of the exchange and so forth. But you know what? When Henry's also, I do a lot of speaking with Henry on the Provoke side, and at the start when he was doing Crypto Capsule early, I said to him,
"You need 3 screens for him, right?"
and I was wrong. I'll say it in on the air here. I was wrong on that because it's become a brand of his, and it's identified him uniquely. So anyway, getting off the track,
Brett. In the meantime, Ajit is forking to another podcast because we lost him.
Yes.
Yeah, these Bitcoin guys, they fork all the time.
Yeah.
So let's go myself. Compared to Nina, I have to say, I don't remember all my children, but I think I love them all. So the episode that I enjoyed the most, I guess, is the one with the European Commission. There was a lot of preparation for that episode. It was good to give the voice to the biggest institution around and to try to aggregate conversation about funding, about interoperability of identities, payment system, and so on and so forth. So that was truly entertaining and I think enrichful. Also a moment for Breaking Banks.
Maybe if anyone's got any others, we can jump in there. But I was going to ask Matthias this one. is, and all of you can jump in as well, but, given our attempt to create a European voice for the FinTech audience, how do you think BBEU has really done that, created that sort of European-centric voice? Because it's really the first European, FinTech podcast. In that sense,
it truly is, and I think it's let me say, and just maybe lifting the lid a little bit of when we had our editors' conversation, what the topics might be and so on. If you focus on the one side, on the region, I think this is getting really interesting, and in particular, given the fact that this region is so heterogeneous, like Europe, you hardly can compare it like whatever kind of a German market with a Portuguese, with an Italian market, and not to forget about maybe southeastern European regions going down to Greece and so on. So it's extremely heterogeneous, very, very complicated, I would say, by doing so on the one side. On the other side, Europe, out of my perspective, we are not in the center of the development sometimes, or let me say most of the times. And that is making it even very difficult because, who's interested to get a report out of the third wagon of a train instead of the kind of running engine, Actually, this is more like it could be more like a victim's report instead of the burning, the cutters and the leading forces report. So it's that I found to be quite interesting and challenging. I remember one show we had, Outside Interview from Singapore, for instance, which of course is super interesting because I regard Singapore to be still one of the hotspots for FinTech heading the movement areas. Yeah, it's not easy. I think if there would be a look into the future, I think we need to be maybe even more challenging with our guests actually, and really kind of not saying, I don't want to say kick their ass a bit more, but I think we should do. Yeah,
hold their feet to the fire.
Yeah,
I don't know how you say that in German, but
everybody understands.
Yeah. So what? Ajit, you're back, I see.
Yes.
You've joined us again. You were doing a Bitcoin trade or something, were you?
I was using a blockchain instead of Wi-Fi to connect, so I kept getting disconnected. Right.
Yeah.
Hodl.
Yeah. Hodl.
Hodl on. Right.
I asked a really well-known Bitcoin commentator. I won't say who they are. Very well-known, personality in this space. If they were, to explain HODL to the audience when I had them on a show, they hadn't heard of it before, which I thought was really strange.
That's disappointing.
Is that the thing?
So maybe Nina, Ajit, Matteo, Paolo, Megan, you guys jump in. What's been really European about the show that you think we've added our European fingerprint to it?
The accent.
The accent, of course, yes, and also the fact that we tried. I mean, I don't know how many EU countries we did, but we got this format that is called like ecosystem zoom in, and I think we did Portugal, Italy, Germany, France, Holland, a few more. Spain. We are actually recording Spain this week. And and we try to bring the representative from the good entrepreneurs, some incumbents, maybe a regulator, an investor, or any combination of this. And it's actually great because all of a sudden you got all these ecosystems that are different but trying to do the same thing, and giving visibility to all of them in the same platform. I think that it got a great value. I mean, they were extremely grateful for us to giving them space. And I want to add that my favorite episode, or one of my favorites, is the impact one. Is this conversation, together with Nina, with this three amazing ladies that are all into a diversity, equal opportunities, women entrepreneurs, sort of. Leveraging or helping infrastructures And it was amazing. It was so amazing that it was a little bit like this convo. It was completely like an open mic. And then we did another one, and without any agenda. And all of a sudden, the links that or the connections that we created actually brought. They started doing business together, which is something that was even more sort of greater.
Absolutely. Paula? Megan?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, like, I think similar to kind of like echo what Matthias said, Europe is just so diverse. In terms of, you look at some of the fintechs and banks and what's happening in Sweden and in Norway, and you see kind of, how there's completely different, nuanced, customer-centric fintechs in Portugal and in Spain, and, even, parts of like Eastern Europe and everything. And I think, like, for me, this has really captured the diversity that is Europe. There's so many different things going on, and I think we've done a really good job of showcasing like the not so well known success stories. And I think my second, or maybe tied for first, episode was when we spoke to the folks at TBC Bank in Georgia. I think a lot of people aren't aware of them, but their launch of their digital offshoot space has just been such a success, and to hear some really cool stories from the folks over there. So I think, for me, it's the diversity and range of guests and topics is really kind of like, it's done a good job of mirroring what Europe is all about.
Is it fair to say that you guys have created a podcast that you would like to listen to?
Yes, for me anyway.
Yeah. Ajit, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I'm technically not part of Europe anymore because, we have Brexited. Thank you for including me. And
still you're not. Fucking Holmberg's still not gone. You voted for that silly step in 2016. And still you hang out there, right?
I'm in the US. Don't talk about voting for people.
Guys.
I still oppose Brexit, right? But we had this episode. We had several great episodes. We had one with David Birch, and it was really funny.
There was a Christmas one last year.
Yeah, there was the Christmas show. That was really, really funny and truly enjoyable. Then we had a blockchain show, and in blockchain people complain about diversity and not having enough gender diversity in particular. And all of our guests were really accomplished women in the field, and I think that was a really great story. They had a lot of great things to talk about. So we have actually pulled off some really great stories in AI. In sort of in privacy, and I think there's lots of unique dimensions to being in Europe and working in fintech in Europe, because as I often joke, only half seriously, China innovates first, US tends to monetize, and Europe regulates everything. So we are just great at regulating, and every episode we are on, there is always some rules to talk about, and then that throws a very unique perspective on what fintech in Europe.
So
but that's a bit maybe too self-critical for Europe. I would say that even the US and Asia and Asian regulators are extremely active, right?
I mean, the US's big problem is they've got too much regulation.
Too many regulators.
Even just the Community Reinvestment Act, the 1977 law regarding financial inclusion that requires banks to have branches to fulfill their financial inclusion obligation, is now limiting growth of digital banks in the United States, as an example. But anyway.
Nothing like that would be existing in Europe, by the way.
Guys, I think it's about to make a wrap up, a little break. Now, I want to talk after a break about one of the most ambitious episodes ever that I did with Ajit. We wanted to make a fintech episode about God, but we can tell you all about that after a break.
The crypto God? We will be back after these words from our sponsors.
Do you want to be part of Breaking Banks Europe? Reach out and learn more about the opportunity to be featured in one of our shows. With over 1.6 million listeners and counting, Breaking Banks Europe is bound to become the place to advance critical dialogue in Europe and the UK fintech scene. Reach out on Instagram or Twitter at BreakingBanksEU or go to www.provoke.fm.
Hey guys, welcome back to Breaking Banks Europe. This is our birthday show. So we have, our daddy, Brett from the US. Thank you, Brett, for putting us together. And,
I'm the OG, right? The old guy.
And we're together with all the hosts of the show. I was actually thinking earlier that all together we speak 7 languages plus Indian, which is not exactly an European one, but is always, interesting to remark. And Paolo, you have a wonderful anecdote to open up the second part of the show, right?
Oh, well, one day I thought, why don't we have an episode about God? They said, let's invite Brett King. And I said, no, he's king, he's not God yet, okay? So then we decided to connect to Vatican City. So we had Paolo Benanti, who's a theologist, and we had a discussion about ethics and technology. Wow. That to me was very entertaining. And having Ajit there, we tried to make these cross gods, because God has an S at the very end. So that was really ambitious. Yeah, really people talk about future. We talked about eternity. Think about that. It's very strategic.
Wow. Yeah, it was really deep, Paolo. And, I did manage to challenge even a man of God. But but I think it was really
It's not a good... You shouldn't make a habit of that, man. You never know what's going to happen in the future, right?
Absolutely. I think it depends on the party you vote for. But anyways, so that was a really deep conversation, and so there's lots of great insights that came that I hadn't really ever thought about. And I think we should integrate some more of those into conversations about technology. Follow more on that.
Mattia, so what do you think of the way that we sort of handle the different news, the news from the different fintech fronts, and, talking about COVID and how the different countries took measures, did you enjoy this convo? I'm asking you because I wasn't there. It was like Lazzaro and Francesca, who is one of the guest hosts, but I thought it was a pretty interesting format, right, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what worked out very well is a great mixture of, or great blend, so to say, of, on the one side, actual developments and talking about that, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And also on top, having some fundamental conversations, because as we just heard, a conversation about God is nothing that is this is super fundamental, and this is nothing that would be a kind of fashionable or trend conversation only on the one side. And having then also, and this is what, listening and thinking about all this and listening to it, having thought back what happened over the last 12 months as kind of actual developments on FinTech, I would say it's a mixture of a lot of things happened, and on the other side, somehow absolutely nothing, right? So out of my perspective, it's we're always hunting the kind of what is the next big thing and the next big revolution, and we will find out, well, maybe we first of all have to digest the old revolutions and not creating a new one on the one side, and we have to, on the second, to adopt the old revolutionary thought now to this new COVID environment. And we spoke a lot about COVID over the last 12 months, and we have to speak about it again, sadly. So let me say, the current development in the last 12 months did give us a lot of food to talk, sometimes in a good way, but sadly also sometimes in a unwanted and unrequested way. More than we could ever talk about, actually. Yeah.
I was actually thinking, and then I will shut up, promise, but when we talk about what else we could or should talk in Breaking Banks Europe, but not actually, Brett, that's something that could be totally picked up in the US as well. I would love to talk more about sustainable finance, which is almost a spin-off of our Breaking Impact, which is another of the formats that we do. And I was listening to this amazing French professor, researchers at the CERN in Geneva, who scientifically talks about the sustainability of the current economy. It would be amazing to have him.
Yeah, I think we can really bring a truly unique European lens on it. I've lived in different parts of the world, and the sustainability, health and safety standards are generally higher across Western Europe than in, let's say, China or anywhere else that I've been. And a lot of our regulation is really geared towards creating more sustainability. I think there is some value in sort of bringing that perspective to the rest of the world.
And Ajit, and on top of that, actually, Matteo, maybe we should reach out into other industries a little bit more, because I can not speak too much about it, but I'm thankfully involved in a project which is dealing with the carbon footprint on the one side, and how the reduction of a personal carbon footprint could help you to increase your personal financial situation. So to create a great incentive on that,
Yeah.
So, and this is only something you can do once you speak about the carbon creating industries. On the one side, there would be another development. Just let me add one more. It's like, guys, did we ever think why gaming industry is doing so much better than fintech or banking industry? Why does everybody love to spend money on games and spend time on it? And whenever we are in retail banking and we want to charge the customer something, it's too much and everybody hates us.
Yeah, so
we got to add badges and rewards.
Yeah, but wait. This is where crypto comes in, right? So if you look at what the Cash App, Square, and the Revolut guys have been saying, so crypto really increases customer engagement, and that's why you're seeing a lot of these payments apps and banking apps start to integrate crypto, and crypto is a bit of gamified finance. So there is something there, Matthias. And maybe my kids can answer why gaming is making so much money.
And believe me, I ask my kids frequently about it, and gamification, I would say, is not enough. Gamification is still another term for lipstick on the pig then, right? But just a gamified lipstick on the pig. And finally on crypto, that is another 12 months learning out of it. I would say still crypto is too distanced to mass market retail. Still, you have to study to understand crypto, and I think there's another homework to do for the future.
You can use
Nina and Megan, you're the closest to the age of the video gamers. Do you have any view on this?
I'm not a gamer, but I completely agree on the crypto side of things. I think there is definitely a need for, a lot of education around it. And I think that's definitely kind of a challenge in seeing it go mainstream. Nina, what do you think?
I think maybe stepping away from gamification, because I can't say that I know much about it. I'd have to speak to my brother, who actually is Gen Z, and so knows all about it. I think, having watched The Social Dilemma recently, did you all watch it on Netflix?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that a lot, and I've been thinking a lot about how a lot of financial services and, the hush-hush, the WhatsApp conversations that we have, you've got big banks trying to spin out lifestyle brands, or just actual challengers or fintechs trying to be lifestyle brands and trying to constantly engage customers, whether gamifying a la Robinhood, or free trade in the UK or whatever. What's the one in Germany, the Huddlestock, that people use in Germany, or Trade Republic? But I think there is a very dangerous line that we're tiptoeing towards with financial services as lifestyle. And I think the conversation around embedded finance and that invisible layer that we also love to talk about, and being too much of a lifestyle brand, can get you in trouble. And we've seen that at my own employer, for example, but also with other brand-led businesses where you start getting the regulator breathing down your neck going, hey, you are offering people loans, and you need to stop making it look so sexy that you're offering people loans. So that's something I've been thinking a lot about. And what is the cost of engagement, and what is the end goal of the engagement really when we do this? So something that I've been thinking about.
Yeah,
lots to talk about.
Yeah,
Actually,
I use Twitter a lot. So engagement, there is a cost to engagement.
Yeah, getting into the environmental sustainability thing and sort of coronavirus, I think one of the, I think it's actually we're trying to think about if capitalism itself requires a redesign. I know, Paolo, you've written a lot on this topic as well, but I don't know whether you guys are sci-fi readers, and I know I'm pigeonholing myself because I often talk about sci-fi and stuff, but there's a great author, and this comes back to your comments, Matthias. That's actually what stimulated me. His name is Stanley Robinson. He's a sci-fi author. He's written on the colonization of Mars and climate change. He's probably one of the most impactful sci-fi writers when it comes to climate change globally. And so when he wrote about Mars, he actually wrote about a sort of economics based on what they call eco-poetics, which was that everyone's asset wealth or their debt was based on how much carbon they either put into the atmosphere or how much they consumed to create benefit to the economy. So it was really this thing: if you were carbon neutral or better, that you were rich in the Martian economy, whereas if you were using resources that Mars needed to survive. So really it came back to, if you look at what would be the objective of a Martian economy, the primary driver would be sustainability, not requiring Earth to send shipments, right? And so if you're doing that, you want to be very energy efficient and efficient in terms of use of water and air and resources like that are limited. This is the Mars trilogy, Matthias. It's called Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars, and his new book out that tackles this on an Earth perspective is called The Ministry of the Future.
Okay.
So I really recommend you guys check it out. But it does raise the question of whether we are seeing with COVID, and I'm trying to tackle this with my new book, The Rise of Techno-Socialism as well, is that when you look at the impact of COVID and then you factor in artificial intelligence and how it will change employment, and then you factor in climate change and how that will change the world, capitalism doesn't have the resources to deal with this innately. Like climate change itself, you could argue capitalism failed us there. It didn't incentivize companies to do good things. If they were doing bad things that made a profit, capitalism encouraged that, right?
Brett, isn't that a thing? Isn't that a topic actually also of simply accounting? As long as you do not account something, it's not there and it's not motivating a company or a corporation. And then we come into movies like The Corporation. What is it like? What is it accountable for? And if you would account actually carbon footprint into it and buy the carbon certificates for the first time, this is possible. Now that is a game changer, and I find that super interesting. That's a great topic, and hopefully, actually, and by the way, actually, why not writing a book which is called Breaking? What is it?
On Mars.
Breaking banks on Mars, exactly.
Yeah.
See, look, I won't look. This is the first time I've actually mentioned this, but I'm actually working on an economic thesis document I'm going to send to Elon Musk about the structure of the economy on Mars and building a banking system on Mars. So, because this is about the only way I'm going to get Elon Musk to say you need to go to Mars, right? And I want to go to Mars.
I'm strongly pledging to set up a bank branch on Mars.
Yeah.
Yes.
And an ATM.
The global bank of Mars, yes.
Matthias, how about we do a show that's called Breaking Carbon or something?
Yeah, that's good.
Happy to do so. And
I know some great guys we could introduce on that. Tony Seba is one of the top guys in that. Ramez Naam, a sci-fi author who's also energy specialist for Singularity University. Some of you know him. Anyway.
And there you could see actually if there is one reason why setting up a fintech company, at least for me, was always giving me the purpose and the spirit. It's banking, it's fintech with a purpose. And this purpose definitely is beyond banking. This is actually, I would say, we have to have a closer look to what kind of a purpose those companies, new ones and incumbents, doesn't matter, are supportive to. It cannot be, as the French would say, la pour la only. So just for doing it. Paolo.
You see, the cost of engagement means that it's not just about purpose, but also incentives, because otherwise purpose remains at the level of the chit-chat conversation. So how do you build incentives that realign everybody's interest? So you start from micro, the individuals, and you go macro to the whole society. That's what can definitely change. Otherwise, we're not going to make real impact in banking, in the economy. And I think that fintech lost a little bit of... the initial thrust, because the discussion of value has never been there or was immediately forgotten, because the discussion of the VC is way more entertaining, if you like, for the masses. But we need to gain that back, because if we do that right, we really do it right for everybody.
Couldn't agree more. We lost a little bit on the impact.
I was actually thinking that sort of COVID and climate change, they both depends of humanity like self-regulating itself, right? So when we are in a situation where, in order to overcome this, we need to rely on each one's self-discipline, right? And it doesn't work, right? So with in Italy or in most of European countries, like a second wave of lockdown inhibiting, the freedom of people is the only way to make people behave, unfortunately, right?
So, Matteo, good big question for you. According to Parker, Van Alsten, and Chodari, which is the best and biggest principle for self-regulation on platforms?
Tell us.
I don't know.
If the question comes from me, the answer has to be transparency.
Okay.
Easily said.
That's what we do with the blockchain, right, Paolo?
It could also be when you infuse the transparency, you basically force people to change the way they behave, because you transform the economics, you transform the incentives. Without that, you cannot self-regulate. So you need to start building layers on top of layers, and then at the end, control
wait
of
a
it.
second. Sorry, but sure. But what more transparency on COVID you want to have beside everyone's like the hospitals and the how do you say it? The numbers are in front of us. So what is not transparent?
But this is really about the tragedy of the commons, right? So what we have is essentially a shared resource, which is public health. And if I don't think I'm going to be affected by this, and my incentives are to go out and work, then I'm not going to worry necessarily about the common good. So tragedy of the commons is really a much studied topic across regulation in particular and economics. And sure, transparency, but transparency of my behavior to my community. What are we going to do? Name and shame people?
I remember the interview of the foreign minister of South Korea that was back in February on the BBC, and she was asked how come South Korea managed to deal with the pandemic without a strong lockdown. And she said that the principles they applied were basically three: transparency, openness, and advice, which equally apply to the fintech to me, because the transparency meant keeping the public properly informed. There's a lot of confusion around the data these days. There should be a bit less. Openness meant sharing data among hospitals and research centers to accelerate finding a cure in the vaccine. And consulting means we have a first wave, we will have a second wave. We need to keep on reminding people how they need to behave themselves, because it is easily forgotten. And the same goes in fintech. Transparency changes the incentives, builds trust with institutions. Openness is about open banking inside the institution, outside the institution. Without that, you cannot innovate on uncertain environments. And advice is the last point, because the value of banking, which changes engagement from marketing to value for a client, is really building awareness on people on why they need to go through finance, why they need to get a mortgage or a loan, why they need to invest, and so on and so forth. When that is solved, banking is changed.
So Paolo, in the COVID example, how will you incentivize people to stay at home and not travel freely or go to parties and go to beaches.
Well, you see, you need to discuss transparency in terms of incentives, cost, and consequences. That is difficult to explain, right? And you need also to have a language in case of uncertainty that explains to people which is the consequence for each and every one of us and our neighbors. And that was not necessarily done. By fear is not enough. It needs to be done more properly. Some countries have a language which is less emphatic. Others are just emphatic and they cannot hit the target. Is a very difficult task, but it is essential.
Matthias, you wanted to say something?
No, actually, I just wanted to contribute to this before Megan also raised her hand. So I just wanted to say, Paolo, yes, I fully support everything you said, as always, come sempre. Ma, the problem I see, and actually that brings me personally to the end of social media as I see it, is once you look at it, what kind of stupidity is being distributed over those platforms and how much people jump on it. And it's hardly to believe that you say, listen, I thought you are a smart guy or smart girl, but how can you support such and I'm really losing my words on this, stupid arguments, not even arguments, I do not want to even mention those conspiracy theory platforms and all that BS that is flying around there. I think those developments will be the end to social media, to be honest. And by the way, I would even say shall be the end to social media. And it's even the best argument you cannot use anymore. And just imagine a bank which is absolutely incapable in talking to people and endorsing and embracing their customers would face itself in a conspiracy theory that people say, listen, everything you tell me is the opposite. Megan.
I'm in agreement about social media, but Paolo, going back to your point, I mean, I'm slowly migrating to the mindset, or just kind of my thoughts are that the majority of fintechs and banks, challenger banks that we're seeing in Europe, I don't know, they seem to be a bit more less transparent and a bit more kind of predatory than the traditional banks. I mean, I did an exercise where I looked at kind of data consent amongst big banks and challenger banks, and the larger banks were much more kind of transparent and making it easier for customers to understand what these consents were. And I was just really kind of taken aback by how shady some of the challenger banks are. And, we kind of all read the horror stories about, Revolut customers getting suddenly locked out of their accounts, losing money and everything. So I just wonder, does anyone know of any highly transparent or the best in class example of a transparent fintech or challenger bank? Because I struggle to.
It's called Bitcoin, Megan, and I'm not even joking anymore.
Yeah. I would agree with Ajit. Yeah, exactly. But it's not. If you want to be picky and detailed on this, now comes the German. It's not a bank, right? So it's.
Or even so, okay, so we say what, Bitcoin, and then we use the example of Coinbase.
Megan, it's really about the culture, right? So if you want technology firms, or rather tech startups to bring some of the technological innovation into banking, then they're also going to bring some of the Silicon Valley culture with them, and their approach to handling data, customers, their approaches to growth, right? So if you look at the blitz scaling model that Revolut and others have adopted, or Monzo. So I think that there are cultural differences between how these guys operate and how banks operate, and it has its, you get both sides. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say that linking back to what Nina said before, most of the strategies in fintech that I see around maybe comes from Silicon Valley, maybe from old school Wall Street, is still about marketing. So they conceive client centricity like optimizing, selling to a client and sell it on digital, the products. But that's not value, and they will not operate well on a platform. If they really wanted to scale up and become consistent and holistic platforms, they need to start from the client. But that means the monetization doesn't come from the individual products. Until that is changed, they will never fly.
There is that, yes.
Brett, are you okay?
I just sneezed. I did get to the mute button on time.
Untight.
But so Look, I think, here's the question I want to pose to you guys. What's going to be our mission for the next 12 months?
Survive COVID. Survive. Make us survive COVID. Hopefully not. I do not mean it in a health, but more like in a financial
industry way. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. What can we do to help people recover? I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So having many discussions in which we are maybe offering future options and opportunities. Analyzing those, reflecting also on the loss of impact, as I would see over for FinTech over the last 12 months or maybe even longer, because we've been maybe only focused on enterprise multiples. That would be a kind of first answer. Leave it open to everybody.
I think one of the interesting things for me about being a part of this team is the opening up of my own world, because I think just, sitting within the M25, very much London-centric and what are we doing in London, but looking beyond that. And I'm someone that actually wants to know what else is going on in the world. A lot of the value I think that we have been able to bring to our listenership is actually highlighting people that are doing really cool things or building really interesting businesses. I have friends that are investors in the States that are like, oh, wow, that's a really cool business that you guys highlighted. I had no idea that was a thing. I've always thought this was a problem. Great to know that someone's building something. So actually, in a way, we should be paid for being scouts.
Good point. Yeah, I like that.
Someone is thinking like a VC.
Yeah, I echo the self-sustainability of the whole structure. And I'll give you an example. So there is this guy in Africa that started informally to invite a few VCs and invite 5 or 6 entrepreneurs to pitch, and he's doing it every Thursday for an hour. And all of a sudden he has and he does it live actually, and he has 20 or 30,000 people connected, because people don't think of the podcast as a business, right? And I think that that should be, this is what I would like to sort of focus on as well as, of course, keep bringing awesome content, I guess. And we need to, can we do a online round of applause for Renata, that she has been sort of keeping us
keeping us sane.
Exactly,
yes.
keeping us sane. Thank you, Renata, on the back. You can even unmute and say thank you, because I know you probably have Vincent somewhere around you, but thank you so much from all of us as well.
It's been great, guys. Thank you all.
Hey, Renata, we are supposed to see the kids breaking into the calls these days.
It's just happening, yeah.
I thought it was you.
No.
Breaking into breaking banks.
Breaking into breaking banks. Yeah, so I think it's really...
Guys, I think that end of next year, we will change the show into Breaking Big Tech, because it's coming.
Yeah, so. Good point.
Yes, antitrust.
We didn't even get into the Ant IPO thing, which is, I think, going to be a game changer. The largest IPO in history, and it'll make them probably the 3rd largest or 4th largest financial institution in the world. It's huge.
But, yeah.
Speaking of tech, can I just add something to my wish list for one of the upcoming episodes? I would love for us to do maybe a crossover, Brett, if you're open to it.
Sure.
I posed a question on Twitter yesterday, which was, has anyone written a kind of start to finish, this is how I built my FinTech app or FinTech platform or whatever, insert. Something like from source code to shipping, CTO for dummies. And I got a lot of people tagging in CTOs from various consumer fintechs. We've had someone from Acorn, someone from Elvest, responding, and they all kind of went, oh, this is something we should do. But they just don't want to or don't have the time to write it down. So I would love for us to do a separate series of interview the CTO, because I think that would be really fascinating. And I think so often, I mean, the show is called Breaking Banks, for God's sake. We have a lot of bankers that are interested in what is the tech that we're supposed to be using? What are they doing differently that we're not understanding or not getting right?
Yeah.
Would be amazing to just have them on and be like, what do you mean you're still shipping on Friday? Never deploy on a Friday afternoon. That sort of thing, just to step inside the shoes of a FinTech CTO would be
sure. I'd be happy to do that. I'll even get the Movement CTO on.
Amazing.
I think one of the things that would be good to see is to get some customers. I think I don't know who would be a good customer or a consumer of one of these or many of these FinTech services to come. I mean, we are, but we obviously spend a lot of time on trying to analyze and study this space. So, what we call in crypto grandma, so in crypto, we talk about revolution and decentralization, but the acid test is, what does grandma think about whatever we're doing, right? A customer that is not sophisticated, is not building a FinTech, is not part of the necessarily very active in the FinTech ecosystem. What's their experience of what's being built and what's being offered? And I think some of those customer perspectives would be very handy to...
Very good idea, Agent. Very good.
As soon as we don't call it breaking grandma, I agree.
No, my grandma.
And would support that straight away. And in particular, this might be a very interesting show, given the fact that most bankers never speak to their customers. So, very good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've certainly had fun. It's. I think a lot of people don't realize the effort it takes to do a show like this. It's not just the effort of getting on the show, but it's the consistency. I think one of the reasons that BBEU has been so successful, particularly in the last few months where the audience has jumped up significantly, is just that consistency. So I want to say thank you to all you guys for the effort you've put in and the time you've put in personally to this, because Breaking Banks EU would not be the success it is today without the extraordinary efforts of you guys as hosts and Renata on the production side, and Cassie too from the Provoke media team proper. Kevin Hirsch on the engineer, Carlos, our social media guy, the FinTech stage team as well. Matteo, you want to give them a shout out?
Yes, and thank you, Francesca and Lazaro, for occasionally giving a hand, but also Anna for the design. FinTech stage sort of helped for a lot of the backstage work on BBEU, indeed.
And then we have to say thank you to Brett, of course, for starting all that, isn't it?
Well, I tell you how you can thank me.
Yeah, tell me. Why? Yeah, okay. Why am I scared now?
No. So CB Insights has just launched this FinTech of the Future conference, and as part of that, they have the FinTech Hall of Fame. And I don't normally do this, but I'm up for the FinTech Hall of Fame as a media personality there because of Breaking Banks and the Foundation of Movement. So I'd love for you guys to, if you could, think about it. Those who are listening out there, please go and do a vote for me. Just look for FinTech of Future CB Insights Hall of Fame, and give me a vote. I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah,
all my family will vote for that.
Absolutely, all the grandmas
and the grandma.
All right, well,
okay,
that's
guys.
it. So, Megan or Nina, how about you guys take us out to close up the episode, ladies? Last but not least.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And thank you to our wonderful audience for sticking with us and supporting us. And it's been an excellent year. And yeah, I think just based off the last 60 minutes, there's going to be some really interesting episodes to look forward to in the next 12 months.
Europe 50th anniversary. You are the guys that make this possible, our fans and listeners out there. So last of all, we have to thank you. And we'll be back next week, as always, with another Breaking Banks Europe.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Europe, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with FinTech Stage. Don't forget to tweet us out, shout out, or post to the team at Breaking Banks EU on Twitter. If there's something or someone you'd like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next week. on Breaking Banks Europe.